And then when I got into the ER, blood and body fluids everywhere, I'm just like, all right, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Hey, it's Michelle with the Medicine Couch. Today I have another fantastic interview for you. This is going to be part one of a two-part series with a PA named Joe Horneman. He's had one of the most unusual and interesting jobs that a PA or NP can have. He spent 9 months working at the South Pole Research Station over the long Antarctica winter. Joe is an adventurous guy and he loves to travel all around the world. He actually has his own YouTube channel and is also on TikTok, and he goes by Joe Spins the Globe. So if you're interested in seeing some more about his world travels, don't forget to check out his channel. I'll have links below in the description box. But here in part one of his interview, he's going to tell us how he prepared himself to be a great candidate to get chosen to work at the South Pole. Stay tuned, there's a lot of great stuff coming up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's just a quick click, doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps this channel grow and helps me to bring you more videos with fascinating people like Joe. All right, so you have done some amazing things, and from the little bit I know about your personality kind of goes in line with you. You seem to be an adventurous kind of soul. But I want to rewind and kind of go back to the start of your career. So tell me about like why you became a PA.
Yeah, so I had kind of have a long and torturous journey to becoming a PA. I was like, maybe I want to do research. Research sounds pretty neat. Get to leave a legacy of scientific research behind. You know, kind of make your mark on humanity. Do something good. I got into research and I just hated it. I hated the culture. I hated the grind of it. It's not for me. And I started looking into medical professions at that point, and then somebody suggested PA, and I was like, wow, I'm like exactly qualified to apply for PA school, and this sounds like something I'd really like to do. And so that was kind of like the lead up to it. Yeah. So interests don't always line up with the actual career of what you can use that knowledge to do, unfortunately. I think it's sad that you don't often find out until after you have the degree that your day-to-day activities in that job it qualifies you for is not at all what you want to do.
And that's why I always tell people too, when I see people who are looking about getting into medicine, I always tell them, shadow, shadow, shadow.
Absolutely.
Make sure you know exactly what you're getting into, because there's a lot of great things in medicine, but there's a lot of things that are not great, and people have to know exactly what they're signing up for, because it is a lot of work and a lot of money to get there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Find somebody who does the job you want to do or you think you want to do, and shout at them. That goes for any profession, I think, as well as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So when you went into PA school, what was your mindset? Like, what specialty or what did you think your career was going to look like?
So I had already been an EMT, like I said, so I had this predisposition towards emergency medicine or critical care, one of those two. I tried not to be too married to that throughout PA school. I tried to keep an open mind, and going through clinical year, keep an open mind to everything. And every single rotation I did, I was like, yeah, I'm not into this. Yeah, I'm not into this. Yeah, I'm not into this. And I just came to the conclusion by the end, is like, really emergency is where it's at for me. I didn't want to be in a clinic all day. Which is funny because when I was an EMT and riding around in ambulances, I was like, oh man, I can't imagine ever working in a hospital. It just seems so depressing, the fluorescent lights, all the sick people. Like, I can't imagine ever doing that. But then when I actually got in there and was able to understand how to help these people in my clinical year, it made all the difference. And I was like, actually, I really want to do this. I really want to work in an ER.
When I was on ER rotation, I remember one of my first thoughts was, these are my people. These are my people. They have a dark sense of humor. They're sarcastic.
Yeah, I kind of it felt the same way. I'd go into these primary care clinics on my rotations and other stuff, and I was like, these people are just too sunny for me. Like, they're too nice and too. I felt like I was in a straitjacket a little bit, working in a clinic all day, and I couldn't wait to be done. And then when I got into the ER, and we're blood and body fluids everywhere, I'm just like, all right, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I think everybody has that feeling if you're supposed to be in medicine for somewhere, or you should. I hope you do.
So you went to actually and did an emergency medicine fellowship right out of school, correct?
Right. My school graduated in March. I started applying for them around just before New Year's. I think it was November, December, started applying for the following year, which would have been like June, July for when a lot of these fellowships start. Some of them have rolling admission. Actually made a whole giant spreadsheet of every single ER fellowship I could find, and like what each one of them offers,
Right.
how long each one was, this whole deal. And I narrowed down to about 4 or 5, I think. And so I signed up for interviews, flew out to interview. Actually, it was a very hectic month because we were taking finals and graduating and all that in March, and I somehow squeezed in the interviews on the weekends of those weeks, which was crazy. And then I had the PANTS scheduled to take the PANTS like the first week of April, which was nuts.
Sound like before you even starting clinicals, you're having to apply for these if you want to do it as soon as you can.
Yeah. See, for me, like I knew 100% I wanted to do it, and so as soon as they said they were open for applications, I threw mine in. And for me, it wasn't like, well, I might do a residency if they accept me, or I'll take this job. Like that's all I wanted to do. I actually hadn't even applied to any jobs when I was applying to all these residencies because I was so committed to wanting to do it. And I know residencies, fellowships are kind of controversial in the PA realm in the first place because we don't want degree creep to come in. But for me, and I totally understand that, but for me, it was absolutely what I wanted to do because I wanted to get as much experience in ER as possible. I heard back from my favorite, my top pick for residency, and and worked out moving up there over the next 2-3 months. And I think I started in mid-June, there in Iowa City. And great program. Can't say enough good things about it. I learned so much in such a short period of time. Well, 18 months, a relatively short period of time compared to a career, but longer than most ER residencies.
Yeah, because a lot of them I think are like a year, right?
Most are like a year. Some try to really shorten it into 6 months. I think it's maybe a little hard to call it a residency if it's 6 months long.
Right.
A year is probably good. A year and a half is even better, in my opinion.
How many people were accepted when you came in? And then was everyone pretty much a new grad, or do they take people who have been working for a little while who decide that they want to do a fellowship?
So I believe they had 5 concurrent students. So they would take 3 1 year and then 2 the next year, and then 3 they'd alternate 2 3 2 3. My year there were 3. Both I and one other PA in the residency were new grads. The third guy, he'd been working in ER for a little bit. He didn't end up finishing the program because you don't make that much money. You make the same money that an MD resident does, which is, I think back when I was there, like $56,000 a year. So you have to take a pay cut. You don't have full autonomy. A lot of times like you're used to if you're already out working in a career. So it might be hard for some people to, especially if you've been out for 4 or 5 plus years, to go back to a residency in the specialty you already sort of know and take a pay cut. And it takes some humility for sure. And it takes you being in a part of your life where you can afford not to make as much money.
Right.
So I think it's very popular for new grads or maybe a year or 2 out. The other situation I could see it appealing to is if you want to make a specialty change. You spent 5 or 6 years in ortho or something like that, and you're like, you know what, I hate ortho or I hate critical care or something like that. And you're like, I really want to get into ER, but I really want to get in with a jump start. Let me do this residency.
Right. Yeah.
That's the other situation I could see.
Yeah. I know there's controversy not only with, like you were talking about, the doctors and scope creep and things, but there's a lot of PAs that don't really like the idea of residencies or fellowships or whatever you want to call them for PAs. But I also feel like that the profession is changing. I feel like maybe years and years ago when people came out, there were doctors to help mentor them and help them grow that first couple of years. But I feel like now there's so many times you come out and they just, expect you to
jump right in,
jump right in from the get-go.
Or learn on the job, have your peers teach you something, the nice ones,
And so I like the idea of, fellowships and residencies for those who want to anchor deeper into their specialty. And what do you think? Are you CAQ qualified, and what do you think about that?
That's another good question. Speaking of degree creep, so after I finished the residency, I had basically completed everything I needed to take the CAQ. I had my professors and mentors there at the program sign off and say I was ready. I took the CAQ, passed, and got that credential. How do I feel about it? In general, I'm not too worried about degree creep. If there's an extra credential out there that I can get that looks better on my resume, yeah, maybe it's selfish to perpetuate it in some ways, but I'm probably going to do it. I've always put it on my resume, the CAQ, but I've never had anybody bring it up ever. I don't know if it's recognized by anybody outside of the PA profession. Definitely nobody in HR knows what it is. I would wager that 90% of most doctors have never heard of it. So it's really just something I wanted to do and was proud of, but I don't think that it counts for a whole lot, to be honest. I think the fellowship counts for a lot more, because everybody can relate to that.
I just think that these certifications and these residencies are just a natural progression, because we need to have the skills to do the things that we're being asked, to do. And I don't feel like there's that good mentoring and training that used to be there, maybe.
Right.
And so I think that these things fill a space. Okay, so after you came out of the residency program, where did you end up working?
Yeah, so I came out of residency at the end of 2016, started looking for jobs. I love traveling, and that kind of played into how I eventually got to Antarctica. But I really wanted something that was very flexibility above almost anything else. And I found, I started looking around for like travel PA jobs, which not really as much of a thing as travel nursing, because we don't have compacts between states, unfortunately, which would be great if we did. But
they're working on it.
Are they? Okay, yeah. Because if I could wish for one thing above any other thing in our profession, it would 100%, 10 out of 10 times be interstate compact. But anyway, so I was looking for travel jobs, basically, that were contract-based. I found a few recruiters that worked in hospitals for the Indian Health Services. And I got plugged into this ER in South Dakota on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation, which is about north central South Dakota. It's a 8-bed ER. There is a doctor on 24/7. They do shifts of 12 hours. And then there are 2 PAs that do morning and evening on top of that. And then the doctors overnight. I loved it. I stuck with that basically off and on over the next, that was 2017 to 2021 until I went to Antarctica. And it's really great because the pay was decent and all expenses were paid. They fly me from here in Florida to up there. You get a car, you get your housing paid for and everything.
Right.
And it's a little bit of hassle. You're flying, every 2 weeks or so, 2 weeks on there, you're working every day, 12 hours a day, 12 hours on, 12 hours off, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. So it can be a little bit, a little draining. The volume isn't as high as some urban hospital though. Right. So you're seeing, 15 to 20 patients a day, some days less. And then you fly home and you do that for a couple months and you're like, all right, I kind of want to take off, go travel for a bit. And they're like, all right, see ya. You give them some notice, they find somebody else. And then when you're ready to come back after traveling for a few months, they usually had a spot for me without too much trouble.
So you were able to get that without having worked in ER, but I guess they probably counted your residency, 18 months as knowing that you'd be able to handle it. So it probably would be hard, I would imagine, for somebody who's like a new grad that doesn't have experience to land a job like that.
Yeah, and I would recommend that they don't at all do that, because I would say you're way better off being in some like crazy trauma center as a new grad than you would be out in the middle of nowhere. And that sounds maybe paradoxical, like it's not something that would make sense, but you may be the only person there for one reason or the other in the ER. And if you're a new grad, you do not want that weight on your shoulders. Be somewhere where at least you can, send up a flare for help if you need to. And so someplace where it's not just you and a doc, or possibly just you if the doc gets sick or injured or something like that, then it could be just you, Because we didn't have surgery, we didn't have labor and delivery there at this hospital. We're 3 hours away by ground to the nearest trauma surgery. Even a flight is going to take probably minimum 2 hours. So you have to know what you're doing a bit. And you don't have time to sit around and look up stuff on, online of like the proper treatment for something or whatever.
Somebody's crashing.
You have to know what you're doing. So I would say absolutely not. A new grad should not look for a job like that. And I'd hope that they wouldn't hire a new grad in that position.
So what are the things that you really love about emergency medicine? And what things may have surprised you or have been different than you thought it would be getting into this field?
I really love the just the fast pace of it usually, or the fact that you have to know what you're doing. The variability definitely plays a big factor for me. I love the fact that you never know what's going to walk through the door. The kind of there's this feast or famine kind of aspect to it. You're either getting a bunch of patients or you're kind of like relaxing for a bit. You know, it's not just like a steady stream of the same thing day after day after day. I think that's one thing I didn't like about doing my clinicals in primary care clinics or like ortho clinics or whatever. It's like, okay, well, these are the 15 patients we're going to see today. I already know who they are. I know what their problems are. And, you can just imagine your whole day, your whole week, your whole year, mapped out for you. And I just, for some reason, that bugs me. So I love the variability. I loved in this ER in particular, I really loved the Indian Health Services ER in South Dakota. I loved the closeness I had with the docs that I worked with, because it was just you and a doc or possibly another NP or PA.
Right.
And so they're right next door. You could talk to them anytime. They always had time to talk or discuss a case or whatever. It was very kind of
that's nice.
cozy setting, I guess, which I really, really liked. That was one thing I liked about that ER. I noticed it's not the same in every ER.
Right.
A lot of times it's just fend for yourself in some more faster paced places. And, if you ask for somebody's attention, it's almost like you're bothering them. You're taking their time away from their patients. And
again, why I think these residencies are a good idea.
Yeah, because residency is the time when you do that. Like, you're there to bug the attendings to learn stuff. And so that's your right to do it, Just go up to one of your attendings and ask them and have them teach you. They'll go back to the patient's room with you, show you what you're missing, show you what needs to be done, how they would do it, and really learn like the art of medicine. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It's invaluable because you may work 10 years someplace and not get the kind of experience and hands-on teaching that you would get at a place like that.
What do you think are the biggest challenges that people face in emergency medicine as far as challenges for them liking it as a career?
The hours can be long and otherwise can feel really long. A lot of times you're required to take so many night shifts a month or per year or whatever. That can wear on people. I think a lot of it has to do with work-life balance for some people. Is somewhat harder because it's not always 9 to 5. It's rarely 9 to 5. I think a lot of it comes down to people wanting to help with a lasting solution for patients. And that's generally not what we're able to do a lot of the time in the ER. And I think that really wears on some people. And I totally understand. That can be a big drag. Like, the most satisfying things for us as providers in the ER are the problems that we can fix right there, whether it's draining an abscess or numbing up somebody's alveolar nerves to get rid of their tooth pain for 8 hours. Like, those are the most satisfying things because we get to see the results right there. And that's just rare. Other specialties, they get to have that pretty often. I think when they get to see a patient over weeks and months and they see somebody improving, whether it's ortho or a primary care physician seeing somebody's hemoglobin A1C coming down, like, that's progress and that's rewarding, but we rarely get to see that.
Yeah, it's a totally different mindset. It's just take care of the immediate problem, and then it's somebody else's, follow-up, and you often don't ever know what happened to that patient.
I do love it though. For me, it works because I'm okay with that concept, and I actually like that. Like, I like fixing people up enough, like splinting somebody's broken bone or broken arm or something, and sending them off to the ortho, and then maybe a year later, I'll see that person for sinus infection or something. I'm like, oh yeah, how'd the arm turn out? Like, oh yeah, it turned out great. Like, the ortho was really happy with the job you did, or something like that. I'm like, oh, awesome.
So you worked in EMS, you were an EMT before you
Briefly,
went to PA
yes.
school.
Was an EMT first, and then I went to firefighter school, and that kind of kickstarted my whole wanting to be in emergency services. It was pretty brief, but it was enough to give me a taste to where I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to do more of this, but I don't want to stay at this position forever. Right. I would say if you don't have any medical experience, but you're like, hey, that sounds awesome. Like working in the ER sounds really cool. I would say go to EMT school. It's usually taught at local trade schools. It's not usually super expensive. Paying a few $100 or whatever it costs to do EMT school will give you an invaluable exposure to the to emergency medicine and medicine in general and what you can do for people, and you'll find out whether you like the concept or not.
What other experience besides being an EMT would be good to prepare somebody, like as being a scribe in the ER? Do you think
Scribe in the ER would be great. Yeah. I've definitely met a bunch of scribes that went on to apply to PA school or nursing school. A lot of really good experience.
I always thought the scribes, they get to see the whole process and they learn how to chart,
That is very, very true. Yeah, actually, so that would, maybe it's even better than an EMT in that respect, because if you are somebody that hates charting, like the ER is not for you, because you're starting a brand new chart on every single patient. You don't get to copy and paste from their last note like you do maybe in some other specialties. Like you're starting a brand new note, you got to encapsulate an entire encounter with an entirely new person that may not be in your system. Maybe like getting their whole history. So yeah, it's a lot. It's probably more, I don't know what other specialties do, but I'd wager it's close to the most, or if not the most, charting you can do in any specialty. I know in the residency, I was happy. Now, granted, I was just starting out, but I was really happy if I only spent an hour after my shift charting, after my shift was done. A lot of times it was an hour and a half or 2 hours, unfortunately. Now, that was also because I wasn't as aware of like what information was good to keep, what information was irrelevant. I was just kind of like, bleh, just like vomiting it all on the page. But even now, if I went back to that same environment and was charting, I doubt I would get everything done by the end of my shift. That just seems by the amount of people we were seeing. But I do that at the other job in South Dakota. That's awesome. I mean, when I first got there and I was charting and I did got everything done, by the time I left, I was like, this is so awesome.
Anything else that you think that that somebody should know about emergency medicine?
Nope. I think people get a pretty good gut feeling pretty fast if it's for you or not. I've never really met anybody who's on the fence about doing emergency or liking emergency medicine. Maybe people that couldn't make it work with their lifestyle, but really liked the work. So I think it's pretty apparent to people pretty quickly if the ER is for you, if emergency medicine is for you or not. So it just takes dipping a toe in before you realize.
Well, so that, brings us to the, I wouldn't say the highlight of your career, because there's a lot of cool stuff I'm sure you've done in South Dakota.
No, it was definitely the highlight of my career, for sure.
It's definitely a unique experience that not a whole lot of people can say that they have done, for sure. I know I left you hanging there at the end. Don't forget to tune in for part 2 of this interview, where Joe talks about how he got the job at the South Pole, what it's like to live in Antarctica, and what his duties were as a PA at the research station. If you love stuff like this and want to hear about the cool and unique things that other people are doing, then watch these videos.